Brewers from across the country use a lot of grain to make ambers, ales, pilsners, stouts, porters, goses, wheats, IPAs. Now I'm kind of thirsty. So, while we talk about this particular video, I'm going to be enjoying a Rapp's Barren Brewing Easy Come, Easy Goes from Mountain Home, Arkansas. I had a chance to go there not too long ago, and I'm going to drink the last one in my fridge. That's good. Anyway, brewers use all kinds of grains. They use barley, wheat, corn, rye, rice, and oats. All provided by our farmers that work day and night to get those grains to our favorite establishments. But invasive species might be making those beer prices go a little higher than we expected. One of the most recognizable invasive species, and one of the world's most widespread, is the feral hog. Feral hogs not only damage crops by consuming almost all kinds of crops, but they also trample, their rooting behavior, and they wallow in the fields. The greatest losses of agricultural crops due to this animal have been known to be sugarcane, sorghum, and the essential barley, wheat, and oats. And it isn't just the crop damage they cause to our farmers. They can cause damage to pastures by decreasing the grazing land and even spread diseases to livestock and to us. They're known to carry about 40 different parasites and 30 bacterial and viral infections, including brucellosis and tuberculosis. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, feral hogs cost an estimated $2.5 billion in agricultural damages a year. Those costs are passed down to our favorite hangout spots, then onto us, all thanks to the introduction of a favored barnyard animal. Now with an estimated population of around 9 million and a coverage of a majority of the United States, 38 states have reported feral hogs and their damages. A female hog can start reproducing as early as 6 to 12 months and can have up to 6 piglets after a 115 gestation period. A population can triple within a year, making this species a prolific and successful invasive species. Feral hogs aren't the only invasive animals that can affect our beer. Invasive birds like house sparrows, pigeons, and European starlings have a major impact as well on the agricultural industry. Maybe not as noticeable as feral hogs, but still have a huge impact. Starlings and sparrows especially have a negative impact on our agricultural industry. House sparrows have been reported to have reduced an entire wheat crop by 25%. A single sparrow can consume around 6.5 pounds of food in a year. But it's these large populations of this bird that can cause so much damage. Even if you're not a beer person, but you enjoy a glass of fine wine, these invasive birds can still affect you. Whether you like beer or wine, European starlings have messed with your preferred taste. It is estimated that starlings cause $800 million in agricultural damages a year. That being from grain loss, grain contamination for livestock, and they have a taste for fruit as well. $189 million in fruit damages each year is due to this invasive bird. The main fruits these birds tend to dine on are blueberries, wine grapes, strawberries, apples, and cherries. And one of my favorite beers that Hidden Trail Brewing brews is the strawberry honey wheat. Some invasive species aren't just targeting the grains that go into that beer, but the fruit as well. So it's making it more and more difficult to enjoy. Invasive insects also make it more difficult for farmers and brewers to create their art, especially one that is very recognizable in the East and detrimental to the beer industry. The spotted lanternfly, a native insect to China. This invasive insect is a relatively new invasive species here in the United States. Only discovered in 2014 in Pennsylvania, this species has spread to 14 states. And in 2020, This insect alone in Pennsylvania was responsible for over $324 million in agricultural losses. This particular insect species will feed on the tissue of the plant and leaves a sticky substance on the leaves of the plant called honeydew. This honeydew will then grow a huge mat of fungus which prevents the leaves from photosynthesizing. But why should brewers be afraid of this insect? Well, one of its preferred foods is hops, a key ingredient for beer. Again, not good, and with the rate of spread this insect is capable of, a lot of states are taking precautions in preventing its spread. So we've talked about invasive mammals, birds, and insects. So now let's talk about invasive plants that also can result in higher beer prices. Invasive plants are a major issue for farmers. Plants like Kochia, the symbol of the American West, the tumbleweed. It's not even a native to the United States. This invasive plant competes with many crops. If you would like to learn more about this plant, I have a video on it when I covered the opening of Hidden Trail Brewing. I'll link that into the description below. Invasive plants like Kochia, bindweed, eastern red cedar, Russian thistle, bull and musk thistle, Johnson grass, and so many more are hitting our farmers just as hard as any of the other invasive species mentioned, competing with our crops for nutrients, space, sunlight, and water, and usually outcompeting them. Not only do they outcompete all our crops, they also can outcompete our native plants. Battling these invaders is especially hard on farmers because many, like Kochia, are becoming resistant to herbicides. As they become more resistant to these chemicals, the chemicals need to be more concentrated, which increases the price of the chemicals for the farmers and making it harder for them to make a living. Our croplands aren't the only thing that's being affected by these invasive plants. When these plants start taking over our natural areas, our own ecosystems start struggling. In fact, invasive species are the #2 cause of biodiversity loss worldwide. Biodiversity loss equals higher beer prices. So, let's raise a glass to our farmers and our brewers in their constant fight against invasive species to bring us our favorite after-work beverages. And remember, always drink local and plant native.